Good morning. Welcome to the I Need More Money show. I'm your host, Matt Monero. I come to you every Thursday, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time out of our studios here in Dallas, Texas. Listen, I believe everybody needs more money, period, end of story. There is no variable there. There is no question mark. When Bill Gates, the richest man in the world, comes out and says he needs more money, guess what, y'all? We need more money. So let's not get caught up into that idea that money won't make you happy, or you really, money's the root of all evil. That is silliness, y'all. Don't allow yourself to get caught up in that. The premise of this show is that everybody needs more money. Don't buy into that premise, y'all, that money isn't going to buy you happiness, that it's not something that is important to you. You need more money. It matters, folks. And on today's show, I'm going to bring in some business guys. My first guest is Ace Chapman. Ace, are you on the line with us?
I am. I'm here. It's great to be here with you.
Ace, thank you for being on the show with me today. Let me do an intro of you, Ace, so our audience gets a very clear understanding of your successes. Ace bought his first business at 19 years old. And since that time, Ace Chapman has gone on to buy 40 plus businesses. Ace believes that other people can follow his lead, and rather than start a business on their own from scratch, they should buy an existing business. They should increase its value by adding more value, and then decide to keep it or flip it. Ace is the author of the book, The Ace Formula, which is available on Amazon, and it's my pleasure to welcome Ace Chapman to the show. Ace, welcome aboard.
Well, when I saw the title of the show, I was like, I can't wait to be on this stage. So it's great to be here.
Well, Ace, thanks for coming on and taking the time. I mean, let's get to it then. Do you believe more people need more money?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of those folks are actually entrepreneurs. We deal with a lot of people on the back end that are starting to sell their business, realizing that they didn't build a sellable asset. And obviously, we work with folks on the front end, like you mentioned, just realizing like, man, it's tough to start something from scratch, and we help them go and buy existing businesses that are already profitable, already have systems in place, already have employees in place, and are going concerns.
Yeah, but Ace, we got to slow down here, my friend, because you took me from the sadness to the happiness in about 15 seconds, man, and we got to figure this out because in order for the audience to really understand what you just said, there's a lot of steps to it. Look, I want to welcome another guest that I have in the studio with me. It's my good friend, the CEO and president of UniFi Equipment Finance, RJ Grimshaw. RJ, welcome to the studio, bud.
Hey, good morning, Matt. Good morning, Ace.
Hey, good morning, RJ. Great to be on.
Hey, RJ is in town for some meetings, and I love the way RJ thinks. He's such an entrepreneurial mind, and leading a great bank that I wanted him to join and discuss this. Ace, let's get back to it though, so we clearly understand what you do. You buy businesses that are existing, add value to those businesses, and then do you become the sole owner of the business, or do you still have the original owners as part of the ownership and management team?
I've done deals both ways. It definitely started in my first few deals, just buying the businesses outright. Then I started to find business sellers that weren't necessarily at a point where the business was going to give them the most value. And there were usually like simple changes that could be made in order for it to come to market and really create the demand for the deal that it deserved. And so instead of me just walking away from those deals, I would either invest or consult and get some equity in the deal, partner with them, and increase the value. And it would usually end up being a win-win, because this is not, it's really a zero-sum game. It isn't something where it's like, oh, okay, I've got this business. It's not really working well. I'm going to sell it for 20% less. In this space, the deals that aren't great deals just get no attention and usually go unsold.
Yeah, they die. They die. And so the person worked there 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 50 years, and they end up with nothing. The sad part, though, Ace, is, and I want to get into this on the show, is most of those business owners actually think they're building something. They're building a retirement fund for themselves. They're going to sell it one day and cash out and take the wives to Paris in retirement. And you and I both know that in most situations, that's a pipe dream. It never plays out like that.
And I would add to this, Ace, that also how many times do you come across a business that the goal was to leave it to their kids or have their children step into the business?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think a lot of people plan for. And in a lot of cases, the kids just don't want to be in that business. The odds of them feeling like, hey, this is my passion, just like it was your passion, are slim. And so you got to have an exit strategy. It's amazing the number of people that do a lot of planning to get into business and do no planning on what they're going to do to get out of it.
Totally. They're stuck in the business. Ace, you bought your first business at 19 years old. Walk us through your upbringing. Where'd you grow up? What's your hometown?
So I just got back to my hometown. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's where I grew up, and went to school up in New York. And I was in school using a stock market simulator. And really loved, this is back in the days when the internet was kind of early, so there weren't a lot of stock market simulators. And for me, somebody who was a business nerd since I was a little kid, it was exciting to be able to play around on the internet in the stock market using this play money. And the biggest frustrating thing was that the site was always going down, and it just wasn't well run. They weren't responsive to the members, and so I reached out to them basically trying to become an intern for the summer because they were right down the road from me in Atlanta. So I was like, oh, I can go home, I can maybe go down to Atlanta and intern for these guys. They wrote back and said, we've moved on to another project, we just want to sell this. And that was the beginning of this whole journey that's been going for the last 17 years.
No kidding. So how'd you come up with the money to do that deal at 19 years old?
So that was a real adventure as well. I basically found a friend of mine who also was passionate about this stuff. We'd had conversations and just loved the internet and, this exciting thing. He had a little bit more money than I did. And so that gave me, at least the guts to go back and say, hey, I'd be curious to see what you guys want for it, what's it making, and it turned out to be an amazing deal. They only wanted $70,000 for it, and it was making $60,000. So, and I didn't know it at that point, but that basically represented a multiple of one.
Yeah, one times earnings.
So, today we're excited to get multiples of 2.5, 3.
Yeah. No, that's a deal.
Sometimes being naive can be helpful. So I had no idea what an amazing deal this was. So I went back to them like, hey, I'm going to need you guys to finance half of that, which is totally crazy. But they went for it. So they financed half. My buddy came up with about $15,000. And then I had $3,000 like to my name that I saved up working in summers. And unbeknownst to my parents, I went and got some credit cards for the remaining amount. The funny thing is, my biggest fear at that point had nothing to do with the business. It was one of those credit card statements making it.
That's awesome. That's great. So, Ace, you do the deal at 19 years old, and then you eventually grow that business and sell it. What did you grow it to, and what was the multiple you sold it for?
So I grew it, but did not sell it for more than we made from it. So I made money off of owning it for about 2 years, and then 2001 came. Grew the business. They had about 10,000 members, and it was amazing. We grew it to 200,000 members. Had offers to buy it, and I was doing partnerships with PD and Ameritrade. Well, first it was Ameritrade, and they booked first with PD. It's just all the stuff like back in the day that, of course, I remember like yesterday, just because it was happening at that point. But then, and so there's a bunch of money on the internet, and then 2001 happened. Everything dried up. All of the offers to buy it out dried up.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the things that led me to being pretty trigger happy when it came to selling in the future.
Yeah. That's a good lesson, though. I mean, that really took you through the whole gamut of it, right? Of finding it, coming up with the financing, buying it, running it, growing it, thinking that you're about to make a home run, and then external factors kick in, and it basically ends up trading for what you paid for it. Yeah. So I mean, that's a nice round trip right there.
Yeah. I can look back on it now and think, man, that was an amazing and profitable MBA.
Yeah. Right.
MBA. In the moment, however, I went from being 21, feeling like, man, this is it. I'm about to cash out.
Of course.
Great to like nothing, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is the end.
Yeah.
I dropped out of college, and this has failed, and it's the end of the road.
Ace, I want to stay on the early days of Ace just for a couple minutes, because Chattanooga, when you were growing up as your hometown, was not the Chattanooga that it is today. I mean, Chattanooga has the opportunity, and in some circles is being billed as the next Austin, Texas. There's something special going on in Chattanooga right now. But when you were growing up there, I mean, what was the upbringing like? What did you think you were going to do when you grew up? What were your parents telling you could be and who you should be?
Yeah. So you are absolutely right. Chattanooga at that point had just a little bit before I was born been on the cover of the National Geographic, and they took a picture from a helicopter looking down on the city, and all you saw was a dark gray cloud. The pollution was just absolutely outrageous, and so they've done an amazing job of cleaning up the city. Gary Vaynerchuk just opened an office here, so it has been quite a transition over the last 30 years. So as a young guy, I was always just interested in money and business, which was a weird thing for my parents because they never talked about money and business.
Why were they afraid to talk about? Were they afraid to talk about money, or what was the thought process?
And still are. They're in ministry.
Okay.
And so it just was not a focus of the conversations. We had a lot of great conversations around Christianity and God and helping others, and learned some amazing lessons. But they saw some things when I was young that told them like, hey, this guy's going to be probably an entrepreneur. But it was interesting. I still felt this civic duty, and so my major was political science. But going back to when I was 5 years old, my mom tells a story about getting my very first pictures for school. And so I'm in kindergarten, I get $20 from my mom, and I go pay for these pictures. And I'm just thinking like, man, I got to keep up with this $20. This is an outrageous amount of money.
I don't need $20 worth of pictures.
This is just an infinite amount of candy money. So I get the pictures back, and I'm like, still thinking like, man, these things are worth $20. And so we go to church, and I see my mom passing out the pictures, and so I walk up to her, and I'm like, hey, how much are we charging for the pictures? We gotta make sure we get the $20 back. She's like, I'm not charging for these pictures, I'm giving them away. And I'm like, no, Mom, we have to sell these pictures.
Nice.
Literally got to the point where I'm just breaking down, crying, begging her not to give away the $20. And she eventually relented, and so my very first business was selling
your own pictures. Boy, what an ego you got, Ace. What an ego you got, man. Oh, man.
I wish I could pull that off now.
Yeah, I hear you. That's good. We all feel that way. But listen, Ace, RJ and I have a very interesting viewpoint of business. I mean, we underwrite equipment financing deals every day. That's been our careers, both of us 20-plus year veterans running two very successful businesses. So we look at individual applications of small business owners on a daily basis, and I think it's reasonable to say that the plight of small business is epidemic. That the majority of small business owners, while they can be creditworthy, we underwrite the loan. This idea of getting rich in small business is just not materializing. What is your opinion on small business in America?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it is because of the people stay in the stage and put so much energy and effort into that startup phase that it becomes very difficult to grow it. I meet entrepreneurs, business owners all the time that it's not, they hit that point and there's so much effort. It's like the space shuttle, and it's going up, like all of the force is just to get to that certain point. And then after that, it can just cruise once it's actually in space. And so, it's that very early stage that so much energy and effort and it's put into. And so we meet entrepreneurs that have gotten to that point, which is tough to get to, which is break even. And then they start to make a little profit, and it's like, thank goodness, we made it. We survived.
Yeah, I call that false positive.
They hit survival, and they don't have the thrust to keep moving forward. And it's one of the things that I love, and I see the direction, at least that slowly is moving towards, is Eric Ries's lean startup. So I love that concept of, like, hey, we're in the startup phase, let's minimize this. And if you really boil down to the essence of what he's saying is, 99% of people just aren't going to make it in that world. I've helped people buy businesses who are amazing operators, double, triple the size of businesses that had tried for decades to start something from scratch and were never successful. And so what Eric Ries has done that's really great is Ries said, hey, there's a bunch of downsides in the startup phase. It's the riskiest time to be in the business. You're most likely to fail. You're pouring in a lot of money. You're putting in a lot of energy. And it could all just turn to zero. So let's minimize. Let's make that part lean. And so basically it's saying, like, hey, there's a lot of suckiness around the stage, so let's make that as lean as possible. And the truth is, like, my sense is, okay, if that part sucks, let's just not do it.
Right. Let's let somebody else pay the price for that. It's almost like, I hate to simplify it to this, but it's almost like buy the 1-year-old car, let somebody else take the depreciation when it rolled off the lot, let somebody else go through all that nightmare and that headache, and then when they start to flatline because they're exhausted, they don't have the thrust, or they get into what I call false positive. You were referencing it as it's almost like the owner pulls the throttle back because they think they're starting to achieve some level of success. Then a guy like you comes in and can pour fuel on the fire. But we're going to take a quick break, Ace. I want you to stick around because when we come back, RJ and I specifically want to get to the bottom of how do you do it? Where do you find the deal? What do you become, like a secret shopper and you walk, you scope it out? I mean, how do you know when you're gonna make the move and whether it's even worth your time? So stick around with us, Ace, if you would. We're coming right back. We are back. I'm your host, Matt Monero. We're on the I Need More Money radio show out of our studios in Dallas, Texas. I've got two great guests in the studio with me. I have RJ Grimshaw, the CEO and president of UniFi Equipment Finance out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And on the phone with us, I've got Ace Chapman. Ace Chapman is a small business expert, but not just in a consultative format. Ace gets in, puts his own money up, adds value to businesses, and then helps himself, his investor group, and the original owners make a decision. Do we want to keep running it and make cash flow, or do we want to flip this? Ace, welcome back.
It is great to be here. I'm loving this conversation. I'm excited to jump into some of the how all this stuff works.
So look, I mean, here's what I envision. I envision Ace going through Craigslist, looking through the back of the newspaper, finding something that some guy has for sale. It's either the actual owner or some rinky-dink business broker. And then Ace finds the address. He goes into
Google Maps it.
He Google Maps it. He checks it out. Then he walks by a couple times to see, is there anybody in there? How is the customer? Then he walks in and tries to be the customer. And then all of a sudden he makes a decision of whether he wants to go in and pounce. And then he walks back in and they're like, wait a minute, I know you. Ace, is that how it plays out for you?
In a few cases, but in the majority of the cases, there's a lot more research to decide if it's worth even visiting. So a lot of the leads that we get, we obviously want to look at work. We're going to look at listings. We're going to look at brokers' sites and see what's out there for sale, newspaper, all that. But the very best deals come from referrals. So we network and build relationships with accountants, with attorneys, and to kind of tell them what we do, and then we can help some of their clients that are looking to exit. Because in a lot of cases, a lot of sales end up happening unplanned.
Sure, sickness.
That health concern that comes up, and it's like, the business is just not worth paying attention to. Or, we've been getting some referrals from smaller private equity funds here lately. We had a deal that came to us where a lot of people think about the obvious things, like, there's huge liabilities, we had tax things, we had divorce, we've had health, obviously. But, we had a recent deal out in Arizona where the kid, it's a 27-year-old guy, built a couple of great businesses. One turned into $1 million business, which was great. But the only time you should take your eye off the ball when it comes to $1 million business is when the other business is a $10 million business. So this $1 million business was just draining his time, and every moment he had to spend on that was literally worth 1/10 of the time that he put into the $10
Yeah,
million.
good
So
point.
he wanted to desperately get rid of that smaller business, and so he was more motivated than some of the folks we work with that have had serious illness.
But Ace, I want to just stay for the audience's benefit though on, so you get the lead, whether it comes from and I'm trying to glamorize how you actually, play private investigator.
Absolutely.
But I think the takeaway for the audience is that, listen, it's not like it's done on television. You know how it's done? It's like done with math. And it's done through relationship and networking and analyzing financial statements. But so you're going to get a lead, and how often is the lead presented to you in an educated manner? In other words, are you getting a nice clean book on the business, or are you getting these like scrap pieces of paper that you've got to figure out?
Most of the time, I've definitely dealt with the scrap pieces of paper. So let's go back, because I'm at a different point now where we get a ton of leads, and so I just don't pay attention to the scrap because I get a ton of leads that do have the books and everything put together, and so I'm just looking to decide between those. Let's go back to like 24-year-old days, and a great example actually is of a Craigslist deal. Found a deal, saw it was advertised on Craigslist, saw that the lady had to move to Europe with their husband, and it was a tanning salon. And I had never even walked into a tanning salon. For those who have not seen a picture of me and haven't figured out, I'm African American, so I hadn't ever needed a tan. So I did this tanning salon, but then I'm like, this sounds like a motivated seller. I might as well go check it out. And so in that case, a lot of times you are going in. Like before, I did do a drive-by, like you mentioned, and then I just scheduled a time to sit down with her, because you end up becoming like a forensic accountant. You got to play a little CSI and put the pieces together for some of these folks that are running these smaller businesses. And so go into the business, I'm literally, researched on the internet, like, how does this stuff work? What are the prices like? And so I'm talking to her.
But Ace, slow down just for a sec, because tell me what you are looking for.
Top three things.
Yeah, give me the top. So you walk into this tanning salon, you know that you know what her why is, you don't know much about the business, and so what are the data points, the top 3 data points that you're looking for in that first meeting?
The number one thing is the gross income and the net income, and I want to make sure that that's in line with norms, because that's going to tell me if like either something fishy is going on or I need to really pay attention, and just on a due diligence level, is this reasonable? So if somebody's saying, I'm running this business, like I've got a gross income of $100,000, but I'm making a profit of $90,000, and typically the overhead on a business like that is 80%. That tells me, hey, this guy's just
I got bad numbers.
May not even be worth the time.
Yep.
So, does the deal look reasonable? because the most valuable thing for a deal maker is just time, man. My time is the only thing that keeps me from doing more and more deals. So once I see that that's reasonable, then I'll do kind of another step in looking at the ROI. And so what's the price compared to the net income?
But Ace, when do you ask for the financial statements? I mean, at what point? And I understand that it's important for the audience to understand, though, that what you mentioned was you've moved up the food chain, and so people are bringing you deals, and the deals are better. The presentation of the deals is much more sophisticated because you and your team can get through those. But for a person who wants to get into this business of whether it's buying and selling houses or buying and selling businesses, they really need to understand that it starts with the financial statements. Look, you can tell me all you want about the story and the history, but the numbers don't lie. By the way, the number for the audience to understand, the numbers don't lie if the numbers are correct, right? And most of the time, you must be seeing financial statements that are coming out of QuickBooks that are just messy in those early days.
Exactly. And I really, a lot of times, don't even look at that as much as rebuild my own. So, I'm going to look at what they tell me. I'm going to look, as I've said, like the industry didn't even matter. The biggest things for me are what's the income, what's the multiple, and a little bit about the third thing would be their financing. Are they willing to finance some of the deal at least? So I'm looking at those three things just on the surface to determine if any of those don't make sense, then I'm not even going to go through with a meeting.
What percent? What percent of your deals have seller financing involved?
Oh, 100%.
All of them. Okay.
And your thought process on that is what, Ace? You don't want the guy to cash out and walk away. You still want them to have the skin in the game?
Yeah. So obviously some of it is financial. I mean, it helps with the ROI. It helps with putting the deal together and having a deal structure. We build on top of the foundation, which is the seller financing. The rest of the kind of story is the due diligence. Like, that is a huge due diligence check. What makes this space work is that person is telling you a lot of things, and you're at the end of the day still dependent. Like, if somebody wants to 100% scam you, they can do it'd be a ton of work, but they would have to recreate receipts and just do a ton of things. But the only thing like keeping them from doing that is having a big chunk of their money still tied up in the business. Yeah. So I really want to, for both of those reasons, make sure that there's seller financing on the deal.
So what percentage of the purchase price is typically held by the seller? Is it 50%? Is it 100%? Is it 10%?
About 50.
Okay. So
50%.
50% seller financing, and 50% is your capital that you're putting into the business or your investors.
Mm-hmm.
And what type of terms typically on that 50%? Is it a 5-year note, a 10-year note? How does the structuring work for that?
No, it's usually less than 5, so it's in between 3 and 5.
In between 3 and 5 years, in which the seller should be able to finish their seller financing based on either the existing cash flow of the business or what you change and obviously improve the business. So let's get to that. How important does the business need to be struggling for you to get involved in? Do you need there to be a problem for you to get excited, or are you more excited when there's an up and running business and therefore you're willing to pay a higher multiple for that?
It's both. So the businesses that we want are the ones that are struggling completely but still making a ton of money.
I don't understand, but give me an example of that. How could it be struggling completely and still making a ton of money?
So like just with pretty much every deal has a different case, but like with the story, continuing that storyline on this particular deal is, I walk into the business, I'm talking to the lady that owns it, and, I'm noticing that she is very particular about not selling her people too hard. And she's like, like one of the things that I love about our salon, when you go to these other salons, they're trying to sell you lotion. When you go in and, they're trying to sell you upgrades and they're trying to sell you this and that. And I'm thinking like, that's what a business does. When you go to McDonald's, they don't wait on you to say if you want fries. They ask you if you want some. Like,
Yeah, she didn't know she was.
I don't know a lot about this. I've never tried, but it seems like that's a good upsell.
She didn't know she was talking to a guy who tried selling his own pictures to people at church. She didn't know that.
Exactly. So we talking a little bit more, and it was just endless number of things, and then we ended up at talking about her database of people. She was like, so do you have like a database of leads or anything like that? She's like, no, we don't keep any leads, emails. And I'm like, oh, that's unfortunate. But we have like a customer list, and so the only people whose contact information we've kept is like past customers. And I'm like, okay, well, how many of those are there? And she was like, about 20,000.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean, like 20,000 individual people? So like, yeah, this thing has been around for 24 years. They had 20,000 people in the database. And, so honestly, my next question is, how often do you call, email, or mail them? And she's like, yeah, I don't want to bother them, so we don't really do that. And I was like, okay, that's fine, but like, when was the last time? And she was like, never.
Right.
Like, all right, so let's try to do a deal right now.
Yeah,
and
right.
Right. The first time I walked into a tanning salon, I was the owner within about 30 minutes of walking in.
Yeah, so Ace, what you're talking about there, which is what I like to refer to in my business as acres of diamonds. You're basically looking for things. So your definition of struggle is the owner just can't see the forest through the trees. They can't see these acres of diamonds that are staring them in the face. They're too in their
their own mindset. It's their limiting beliefs to grow a business, that she doesn't want to bother these people that probably want to be educated or updated on what's going on in the business with different packages and things of that nature.
That's totally the owner's problem. And then from the investor standpoint, Ace is saying, how the hell do you not see this, right? And so they're struggling to see their own value adds, because if she had it together and was working those acres of diamonds, you would have paid a higher multiple for that probably. So I got you on that. That's very clear and interesting to me. So Ace, let's talk about these value added things that you really pride yourself on, and in an interesting way, I can see how it connects to your upbringing, though, with your parents in the ministry probably telling you that the importance of doing good and being a good person, and now you found this wonderful platform that you're energized and passionate about. You put the two together, and I mean, it's a very interesting combination. It's just we could probably go on for a long time about this, because I always, you may have heard the intro of the show, Ace, where I don't want to hear this hocus pocus about, money is the root of all evil, and I think that is such silliness. The only people that talk like that are people that got no money. So, it's an interesting combination between the ministry and doing good, and then here you are in this entrepreneurial world trying to generate as much ROI as possible.
So Ace, you had to have some type of influence, Lo, that influenced you to do what you're doing today. Who was that person?
So after I'd done probably about on my fourth deal, I met a guy who flipped hospitals. And for me, at that point, I really still saw myself. It's kind of weird. Like, I saw myself as an entrepreneur. And, somebody that was starting business. I saw the buying and selling as my way of kind of getting to the point where I had a good amount of capital so I could try a startup. And it's just, I think it's a lot around the fact that nobody really talks about buying business. Like, all of the language, every book, every blog, every podcast, everything is about starting stuff. So I just saw that as what you do as an entrepreneur. And then I met a guy who became one of my mentors just randomly. And other people, it was kind of funny. So people are like, oh, you should meet this guy, Mike. And I'm like, okay, who is he? Like, what does he do? I'm like, I don't understand what he does. But I just feel like y'all do some similar things and y'all should meet. So finally run into him at a fundraiser. It was just another thing for your listeners. Like, going to fundraisers and going to events is just a very huge thing. I've had so many connections and different awesome, amazing things that happen from that. But literally, if all he would have done is meet him and he tell me that he flipped hospitals, that would have been like all the value that I needed. But I ended up learning a ton and just changing my view on income and investment, buying businesses a lot because of that.
So, Ace, as we are wrapping up the show, I want to make sure that our audience clearly understands some takeaways that I've taken away. I mean, I'm writing copious notes here talking about this stuff. I think a few takeaways for the audience, and please correct me, Ace, if you think I missed any of this. Number one, got to build your network. I mean, you've got to be able to figure out where can these leads come from, and obviously move up the food chain in your network as well. The second thing is, once the deal presents itself, you got to know your numbers, man. You got to understand how to read a financial statement. You got to understand revenue, profit, ROI, ROE, multiples, which, by the way, I need to finish on that. Number three, once you get into the business, you've got to look for, and Ace, your term was a business owner who is struggling but yet still making a lot of profit. And I'm going to use it as this value add, this acre of diamond concept, that you see some value in the business that the owner can't even see. That's an ideal spot. I want to get to the...
real quick, one thing I'll add to that is I use the one place where I use struggle. That was an example with the marketing. The other times you literally see it like with operation or with hiring, and they really do feel like I'm struggling, or the business hits a certain point and they're struggling to get to that next point, or they're just completely exhausted. You do get these entrepreneurs that are in businesses that are making money, and they feel like, man, I am struggling, and that's a great motivator to sell it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that too. Number four, Ace, I wrote down the importance of seller financing, making sure that not only does it make you as the buyer's deal a little bit easier, you don't have to necessarily fund all the money and go to the market, get the capital, but it also keeps the seller's skin in the game and makes you get, hopefully, a clearer picture on the truth. And then number five, I want to talk about pure multiples here, Ace. I mean, everybody, everyone is such a business expert in buying businesses because we can now watch The Profit and we can watch Shark Tank, right? So we all know how to do it. And and everybody's got this idea that a multiple of 3, 4, 5 times earnings. I always get confused with that on Shark Tank because I think their definition of earnings and my definition are somewhat different, right? My definition of earnings is what's left at the end. Sometimes their definition of earnings is what's top line revenue. So it's crazy to me. How do you go in from a valuation standpoint? And I want to ask you a pointed question. Are you looking to steal these businesses, Ace?
No, I'd rather get a great business at a reasonable multiple. I mean, like you said, we're looking at the bottom line earnings. And so, when you're talking about even a 3 multiple is really high for us. That's a 33% return. And we're typically at 2.5, which is close to a 50%. And so, there's no reason for me to fight to get to 1.5. Right? When else am I going to go and get a 50% return? And that's the whole concept around buying income as opposed to trying to create it out of the air. So, one real quick story I'll give around that is, I sold a business. I met my mentor, who I mentioned, and I was looking to go and start something from scratch. And he, basically let me talk and give my spiel and listen to me, and I could tell he just wasn't really feeling what my plan is. And I'm like, he doesn't get it. Like, I got to be more passionate. So I'm kind of reiterating what this business is, how amazing it's going to be. And he pointed to my laptop and said, at the end, I'm waiting for his feedback. He asked me where I got my laptop. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you talking about my laptop, man? I just poured my heart. Man, I've been working on it for weeks, and you're asking me about my laptop? And he's like, yeah, where'd you get that? I was like, I got it from Dale. He was like, so why did you decide to buy it from Dale? I was like, I don't know, they're very computers. He's like, but you could have built that. Like, you could, go get the parts. I'm like, I don't know how to build that. It's like, you can learn online. Like, you could figure out how to build it. Like, I didn't want to build a laptop. And I kind of saw where he was going with it. And the concept is, like, the reason I want a laptop is so I can get online, so I can, use Word, so I can use social media. Like, I don't want to know how to build a laptop. So the same thing with income. And so when we're looking at these deals, the goal is to buy the income. When it comes to our houses, our cars, or everything, we don't try to build stuff from scratch. It's literally, it's just And when it comes to businesses that we feel like I have to figure out how to build this from scratch.
So with that being said, have you ever bought a business that is not making money?
No.
So if it's an unprofitable business, you'll walk away from that transaction.
Yep.
That's interesting. You don't want to be the turnaround guy. You want to be the enhancement guy. You want to take an existing reasonable foundation and just make it better.
Yep.
So let me just ask you on the multiple side of it again, because I think it's so important, and we see it all the time. Everybody tells us they're going to sell their business for X number of dollars. It's $1 million a year in revenue business, Ace, and let's say it's running at a 20% margin, so they're clearing 200. In your version of multiple, you want that to be no more than 3. So for the audience, that's $1 million in sales, 200 in net income with a 20% margin. Ace is saying that he doesn't want to pay more than a 3 times multiple. That's $600,000 to the owner. That $600,000 is as much seller financed as possible, a minimum of 50%, and that payout of that purchase price of $600,000 is somewhere between 3 and 5 years. Did I just summarize it in a simple form there, Ace, of what you're looking for?
Exactly. That's exactly it.
And the challenge is, though, that owner who is doing $1 million in sales thinks they're loaded, making $200,000 a year, better than the average. They think they're rich, and they ain't going to sell it for $600,000. They think it's a $2 million business.
Exactly.
And they're going to get 100% of the $2 million up front.
Oh yeah, of course. And then they're going to Ace. We're coming up on one more hard break here. Stick around if you don't mind. Let's finish on this last topic of how you do the negotiation of that. Will you stick around for me?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Thanks. Welcome back. Segment 3 and the final segment of the I Need More Money show. I'm your host, Matt Monero. I've got my wonderful guest, RJ Grimshaw, with me, and Ace Chapman on the line. Ace has given us secrets of how you go in and buy a business. Some really good nuggets here. And now we're going to finish with how do you handle the negotiation? Because the reality is, as we finish segment 2, we talked about the example. It's a hypothetical example, but Ace, you've seen this deal 100,000 times. And RJ and I have seen this deal 100,000 times in our world of equipment financing. You got $1 million in revenue. The company operates at a 20% margin, so the owner's clearing 200. The Ace in his purchase model doesn't want to spend more than 3 times net profit, so that's a $600,000 purchase price. And unfortunately, the owner has probably bought a big house. Their wife may or may not work. I'm not being sexist here. It could be a woman whose husband doesn't work, which, by the way, I know a lot of that.
Both of us do.
I'm not down with that, by the way.
I absolutely love it. And we're going to get off topic here, but mentally, as soon as the switch went off, that was a positive. Great things started to happen. Seriously. First, focusing on the additional revenue, it's unfortunate that so many ladies have to work that want to be moms and raise their kids.
Yeah.
But they're trying to keep up with lifestyle.
Yeah. Or sometimes their husbands are deadbeats and they don't want to work hard enough to supply the lifestyle. I'm old-fashioned in that regard. Ace, I don't know your opinion on it, but I don't like the daddy mommies that stay home. I think the man needs to leave the cave, go out, beat it, kill it, and drag it back. That's my stance.
Be a man.
That's what we're meant to do, man. That's what we're built for.
I ain't meant to stay home and do all that stuff with the kids. I'm just not. Not for me, man. I need to leave the cave every day. So, Ace, here we are. We're in the negotiations. You like the business. You're not a turnaround guy. You're not trying to buy junk and put value to it and turn it into something. You're not trying to put lipstick on a pig. But you are trying to overlay your value into it to make the business better and then make decisions down the road of what are you going to do with it. But you got a problem. The guy thinks his business is worth $2 million. You're willing to pay $6 million. How does the conversation go? Tell us what you say.
So the first thing in having the conversation is talking to the right person. Because if you're giving, you guys know marketing. You can all day advertise and spend a bunch of money marketing something to the wrong people, and if they don't want to buy it, or if it just doesn't even make sense to them, it does. Like going back to simple things like Nova. Having a car called a Nova and trying to take it to Mexico, where that means don't go.
Yeah.
So having the right people that you're giving that message to is crucial. So you've got to have what we build, which is a deal flow funnel, which is really just similar to a marketing funnel. At the very top of the funnel, you have a lot of deals, a lot of leads coming in, and then you start to filter those out. So the real work is more in the filtering, and this is where people mistake the work. People see something like the profit, where even in that case, people slip through the filtering, and they do a little bit of it on purpose.
Yeah.
But they are filtering out tons and tons of leads to find the deals where somebody is open to doing something like Marcus is going to propose. And so we do the exact same thing. The average person that works with us that closes on a deal, and you go to our YouTube page and you see people saying, oh, I got this 100% seller finance, or I got this deal, nobody down, or I got it, it doubled within a few months. All those things, the reason that can happen isn't because of some magical words with negotiations. It's because the average person we work with looks at over 100.
I think that's really,
so we put a lot of emphasis on that deal flow and getting that hidden market deal flow.
Ace,
we put a lot of emphasis on filtering. So,
look, that's really, Ace, I know I'm talking over you because I need to get the message to the audience.
Good.
I think a primary takeaway I'm getting from this, and I think it's so great, but the audience needs to understand that the Facebook post of some guy in front of a Bugatti, which isn't his Bugatti, by the way, just FYI, if you didn't know that already, the audience, it's not his Bugatti, nor his private jet, nor his yacht, okay? He lives in a one-bedroom apartment, sleeps on a futon.
But his parents' basement.
Or he lives in his parents' basement. But what's happening here is we are getting caught up in the finish. And Ace, what you're describing here, which is relayed to your success, is that it's the process. It's the diligence. It's the activity that creates the leads that then goes into the right funnel, which then allows you to filter it out. And I think that it's a great example using the profit of the only reason Marcus gets to be in that position, or Ace gets to be in that position, is because the filter has told you this guy will be ready for the conversation and isn't going to fight as much as the other guy, because the other guy who's going to fight you doesn't make your filter.
Exactly.
It's great.
That's the real work.
That's where the real work comes in. And so this hardcore magical negotiation of you being, this unbelievably shrewd guy who goes in and the guy wants $2 million and Ace steals it for $200,000, $600,000. It's really not the way it plays out, because your research, your due diligence, your initial conversations, your networking, the 411 that you've gotten in the deal says this guy's ready. He's ready to sell.
So most of even going back to the lady who was moving to Europe, or going back to this guy who has a $10 million business and needs to sell a $1 million business. In each of those cases, you're talking about, I know it's so funny because people get like, oh man, you must be this hardcore negotiator, you're stealing businesses from people and this and that. And we got amazing deal structures on both of just most of our deals. And, in each case, the seller is grateful and thankful. It's not a situation where they're like, oh, it's this hardcore back and forth battle. It's like, thank goodness you came along. Thank you for buying the business, and I know it's in good hands. And that's more of what it looks like.
It's a win-win situation for both parties.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Ace, great takeaways for the audience. I appreciate it. It's been a fun, enjoyable conversation. I hope to do it again. Hey, listen, let's talk about it for a second. Somebody listened to the podcast and hears it and says, I am ready to sell my business. How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so they can check out our site. It's acechapman.com and learn just a lot more about our process, how some of this stuff works. We have blogs, all that good stuff. You can feel free if they have questions. I'm accessible. You can email me, ace@acechapman.com. And if you definitely check out some of the stories of folks that are just like your listeners that are out there doing multiple deals. Now we've been doing this for a while. So we have people that have done 3 or 4 deals. And so that's exciting as well. So you can just search Ace Chapman on YouTube.
Awesome. So, Ace, I just want to finish with a segment that I call hot and cold here, and I try to relate it to the individual audience's business. You being a business guy, I want to go hot and cold with you. Give us the hottest industries that you are interested in and you think have longevity, and give us the ones that are dying on the vine and people should avoid. What do you think?
So the hottest right now is for us is SaaS businesses, and that stands for software as a service. The multiples are going up like crazy. It's just really interesting the business models that are getting really creative, because you got these amazing profit margins and all your spending is just marketing, because you build the software and it does the work. So those are pretty awesome businesses. I've got a few of those in my portfolio. Businesses to stay away from, I'm not a huge fan. I just, just more of a personal thing. They're definitely not saying they're dying or anything like that. But offline retail is getting a lot of pressure from online retail. Online retail is becoming more and more amazing, where you're going to be able to get everything delivered to your door just instantly. You look at what Amazon is doing, and years ago it was just absolutely crazy. They were even considering sending drones out delivering it. Now they're testing it.
Yeah.
So just some really interesting models and all that. And so I don't want to be competing with Amazon. Although we do have some businesses that are FBA or fulfilled by Amazon. So I love working with Amazon.
Yeah.
We have some affiliate businesses with Amazon.
Sounds great. Ace, I appreciate it, man. Continued with the wonderful success and helping business owners with a win-win situation, buddy. Talk to you again.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Great combo.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you. Bye.